Welcome to Attic Static. Today we have two stories for you, The Soloist of Room 402 and The Echo of the Unspoken. Sit down, relax, and enjoy. The Soloist of Room 402. December 14th. The campus is finally silent. Most students have headed home for winter break, leaving the dormitory feeling like a hollowed-out ribcage. I'm staying behind to finish my thesis in room 402. It's peaceful until it isn't. Tonight, while I was reaching for a highlighter, I heard it, a single, clear note of a cello. It didn't come from the hallway or the room next door. It felt like it vibrated out of the very air in front of my face. When I turned around, there was nothing but the dust motes dancing in the lamplight. December 16th, it happened again. A three-note melody this time. Asterisk pluck. Pluck. Hum. Asterisk it's strange. Whenever I'm walking with my roommate, or even when someone is just sitting in the chair across from me, the song vanishes. But the moment I am truly alone, the very second my eyes close or I turn my back, it plays. It sounds like a lonely cello, slightly out of tune. It's not just music, it feels like an observation. It's as if the room is breathing its own soundtrack when it thinks no one is watching. December 18th. The melody is getting longer. Tonight, it was a full phrase, a weeping sort of tune that seemed to linger in the corners of the ceiling. I started to notice something unsettling about the timing. The music doesn't play on a loop, it reacts to my movements. If I freeze like a statue, the music stops mid-note. If I blink too slowly, it skips. It's as if the song is waiting for me to stop paying attention so it can perform. December 20th, I tried to trap it tonight. I sat in the center of the room with my eyes squeezed shut, holding my breath. The cello began. It was beautiful, a haunting, minor key waltz. But as I listened, I realized the pitch was changing every time I breathed out. Then, the most jarring part, during the final note, I felt a slight shift in the air pressure, like a heavy curtain being pulled nearby. When I opened my eyes, a single chair, which had been tucked in, was now slightly pushed back. December 21st, the soloist is becoming more active. It's no longer just notes, it's a full, haunting song now. The problem is the volume. Every time I am alone, the music gets louder, even though there are no instruments in sight. And the chair movements are happening more often. I found my notebook open to a fresh page this morning with a small smudge of dust in the center, as if something invisible had rested its head on it while I was in the shower. December 23rd. I'm starting to feel watched. It's no longer just a sound, it's a presence. When the music plays, the temperature drops by exactly 3 degrees. The cello notes are becoming sharper, more insistent. Today, I was sitting at my desk and the song began, a frantic, fluttering rhythm. Suddenly, my pen rolled off the desk and landed perfectly upright on its tip. There was no wind, no tremor in the floor. Something is moving in the silence. December 24th, the music is now constant when I'm alone. It doesn't wait for me to move anymore, it flows like a river. But there is a new element, a rhythmic tapping. Asterisk tap tap. Pause. Pluck. Asterisk something is dancing to the tune. I watched a stack of books on my shelf slide 2 inches to the left in perfect synchronization with a high note. The atmosphere is heavy, thick with the feeling of a large, invisible entity weaving through the furniture. December 25th, the music became violent tonight. It wasn't a waltz anymore, it was a jagged mourning cry. Every time I turned my head, the cello notes would spike in volume. It felt like a conversation. I began to realize that the song isn't just playing for me, it's trying to show me where it is. The music peaked on a high, shimmering note, and for a split second, I saw a distortion in the air near the window, ripple like heat haze, shaped vaguely like a tall, slender figure. December 26th, the fear is peaking. Tonight, the song changed into a low, vibrating drone that made my teeth ache. It felt as though the invisible entity was leaning in close to my ear. I sat perfectly still for 10 minutes, terrified to move, because every time I did, the music would jump in pitch. Then, the final shift happened. The music stopped entirely. Not a fade out, but a sudden, sharp silence that lasted for 5 full seconds. In those 5 seconds, the air felt heavy, as if something were holding its breath. December 27th. I woke up this morning to find the room completely different. The music is gone. There is no cello, no humming, no vibrating drone. I stood in the center of the room and waited for it to play, but it stayed silent even when I closed my eyes. Then I looked at the floor. In the dust where the soloist had been dancing, there were now distinct footprints, clear, human-shaped indentations in the dust leading from the door to my bed. The entity isn't just playing for me anymore. It has finished its performance and left a permanent mark. It's finally at rest. And now, our next story. The Echo of the Unspoken. To whoever finds this notebook resting on the folding table, do not be alarmed by the silence. In this laundromat at 3 a.m., the silence is heavy. It feels like a physical weight pressing against your ears. I came here seeking the rhythmic hum of machines to drown out my own thoughts, but I found something far more peculiar. I sat on a plastic chair near the back, watching dryer number 7 spin. It was the only one running. As it tumbled, it didn't just produce heat. It produced a sound, a faint, distorted scratching, like a quill pen moving over parchment, though there was no paper in sight. Then I heard a voice. It was barely a whisper, a dry rasp of air that seemed to emerge from the lint trap. "I missed the way you looked when you were sleeping," it said. I froze. I hadn't spoken a word since I entered. I looked around, but the laundromat was empty. There were no people, only rows of white machines and the smell of lavender detergent. Then came another voice, slightly clearer this time. "The tea is getting cold." I gripped my laundry basket tighter. It wasn't a ghost in the traditional sense. There was no floating sheet or weeping phantom. It was a recording. But it wasn't just any recording. It was a record of things I hadn't said yet. As I watched dryer number 7, the voices began to accelerate. They weren't echoes of my past, but echoes of my internal monologue, caught in the transition between thought and speech. "Is it going to rain?" a voice asked from the corner near the folding table. I blinked. I hadn't thought about the weather, but as soon as that voice spoke, a single drop of water hit the linoleum floor. The recording was predicting my thoughts. The middle of the night became a frantic dialogue between me and the room. Every time I had a flicker of an emotion or a fleeting observation, the laundromat provided the spoken word for it. When I felt a sudden pang of loneliness, the machine hummed, "I wish someone were here." When I noticed the flickering fluorescent light overhead, the air whispered, "It's getting dim." But then, the recording started to get faster. It began to pull words from my subconscious that I hadn't even consciously realized yet. "The door is heavier than it looks," a voice sighed. I looked at the front door. I hadn't thought about its weight until that exact second. The recording was beginning to catch up with my brain, almost as if it were reading my mind one heartbeat ahead of my awareness. Then, the voices started to change. They weren't just narrating my thoughts, they were starting to comment on them. "You're afraid of the chair," a voice hissed from dryer number 7. I looked at the plastic chair I was sitting on. My heart hammered. How did it know? I hadn't felt fear yet, until it spoke the word. It was a feedback loop. The laundromat was feeding my thoughts back to me, and my reactions were fueling the machines. The atmosphere grew dense. The hum of the dryers turned into a low-frequency thrum that vibrated in my chest. The voices became a cacophony, overlapping like a choir of people all speaking different parts of my inner life at once. I remember the blue dress. Why is it so quiet? I should have called her. The floor is cold. It was overwhelming. It felt as if my brain was being laid bare, stripped of its privacy. Every secret thought I tried to hide, the small regrets, the tiny joys, the lingering anxieties, was being shouted out by the inanimate objects around me. Suddenly, the voices stopped. The scratching sound in dryer number 7 ceased. For 5 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, a single voice spoke from directly behind my left ear, so close I felt a slight puff of air. "You're about to stand up and walk out." I didn't have time to think it. The moment the words left the air, I stood up. My legs moved automatically, as if pulled by invisible strings. I walked toward the door, my eyes scanning the room one last time. I felt a strange sense of peace. The recording had finished its cycle. It had captured every thought I held in that moment, and now it was full. As I reached for the handle, one final, tiny whisper escaped from the lint trap of dryer number 7. "Thank you for listening." I pulled the door open. The cool night air rushed in, and as I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the laundromat fell into a deep, silent slumber. The recording was over. I walked home, my mind finally quiet. The end. Subscribe for more horror stories, and make sure to like.